2020 to 21, Australia exported almost 4.2 million metric tonnes of grain and fodder in containers. Australia is a net importer of containerised goods. Ordinarily, this means empty containers are readily available to be filled with grains, pulses, seeds or fodder for export to overseas customers. Over the last 2 decades, the value of Australian exports of containerised grains, pulses and fodder has grown. Australia's container operations are concentrated in the ports of Botany, Melbourne, Brisbane, Fremantle and Adelaide. These ports handle over 5 million containers each year, and many companies in Australia are engaged in the containerised export of grain. To help these companies and the farmers that supply the grain and fodder that is then exported, the Grains R&D Corporation, the South Australian Grains Industry Trust and the Australian Export Grains Innovation Centre have joined forces to investigate ways to improve Australia's containerised grain export systems. The investigations have involved talking to companies active in the container trade. One such company is Schilling Co, who have been involved in exporting containerised grain from Australia for over 15 years. From their packing plant, they annually export around 300 containers, mostly lentils. Schilling Co in South Australia is based roughly midway between Port Wakefield and Port Hughes. Here is Mark Schilling talking to logistics expert Scott Mackay.
Well, Mark, here we are at your packing operation. When did you first build this complex and enter into the export container supply chain?
So we started a business with a group of farmers called Northern York Processing was our original name, and basically we were a group of farmers that got together and said, you know, we need to put a cleaning plant in. So this was always ever a pilot project. And as you know, as pilot projects, you know, they grow and no longer become a pilot project and then become a business. And so we ran that NYP as nearly 12 years. And then, you know, succession and things change in that 12-year period. So then we sold to a big multinational in Canada, AGT Foods, and basically got out of that altogether. Then, you know, 5 years after that, I ended up buying it back from AGT Foods and basically just plant and machinery and silos, and then transformed my farming operation into, you know, basically supplying a market need, and that was the call, primarily lentils and pulses. And then we ventured into, you know, malt, barley, wheat, and all these other things in the meantime. But, you know, in the early years, or pre-COVID, we were doing 200 to 400 boxes a year, packing, going to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, India, subcontinent. And, you know, just recently we've seen the excise or the duty come off of India, which then opens up a whole new population of consumer. But our problem now is containers.
When you look back over the years of operations, what do you see as the key reasons for your success?
Whether we're successful, we have to be a very low-cost operation. So we got to be able to shut down, start up whenever we can. So when I look at the infrastructure cost here, my storage facility, we're 30,000 tonnes now. Do I use it all? No. Do I use it for machinery? Yes. Do I store other things in there? Yes. Hay. So we're a multi-complex, and being on a farm, I can do those things. One of the challenges at first was, you know, how do we pack on farm? And so that was a long process that we, you know, went through with Northern York Processing, and we worked it out and got our premises registered. And ever since then, I've kept it registered, which is a imposition, but a necessity as an export site. And now we continually do that. I'm an AO, so I'm an authorised officer, which, you know, I can ship most things anywhere in the world.
We know that businesses have their ups and downs. When you look back, what are the key things you would have done differently?
Look, I think farmers are notorious for not good corporate governance. You know, structure of businesses. I think that's one of my big learning things, and you know, I learnt that out of being a founding director of Direct Fertiliser, and then, you know, being a director of NYP. I think we could get better at that, and communication. So, you know, the older you get, the wiser you get. You know, when you're 20 or 30, you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Now you sort of look at it and you go, well, we could have done those things a lot better. We didn't. We've got to, they're the things that we pay the price for. We now, it's all about structure. It's about strategic. We've got to be strategic. And we just don't chase rainbows anymore like we used to.
You've been responsible for your own container supply chain, running road trains to Adelaide, using the services of Bowman's Rail. In the last year or so, have you seen improved efficiencies through the port and the container parks responding to the disruptions?
Yeah, look, I'll go back 15 years. I remember our illustrious state government saying, look, when the port exceeds 200,000 TEUs, we get another stevedore. Well, what a crock of bullshit that was. We still got one stevedore in this country, in this state. We have ships that will go, oh, sorry, you got a strike on today, we'll drive past. That's affecting freight routes. That affects my clients and my customers. We can do a lot more to make it more accessible for a grower to access containers. As
you've seen port charges, container charges increase through the stevedore, do you see there a margin grab from exporters through to the infrastructure?
Look, I can see the reasoning behind it because they haven't got the container throughput. They've got high costs and they obviously need to keep a certain cash flow to keep things going. I get that, I really do get that. But we've got to get efficient, guys. I've had to get efficient. Every other farmer, sheep farmer or horticulturalist, they've got to get efficient. But for some reason, when it comes to corporates / government, they don't have to.
We know that 2021-22 have been incredibly disruptive in the container trade. What do you see as the future?
It's a little bit farcical in my view that we as a country don't actually own some sort of freight service provider or have an underwritten way of how to get our commodity to our markets. If government want to help in any way, I think, instead of selling off our iron ore manufacturing or our steel manufacturing, let's build containers. Some of those people that were doing containers are now shipping in vessels, and I think what does help our industry is a group of investors like T-Ports, Duxton, ICAM, those guys. They've decided to invest in agriculture and the supply chain or the movement of grain. Now, all we can do as growers is support a system like that. You don't have to support it 100%, but certainly you need to look at, if you want competition in the marketplace, that's guys like that we need to support. And we need to, help them by investing in our infrastructure. So farmers need to look at the numbers and, I think I've spent just over $1 million on storage. And I've got to say, over the last 10 years, that's paid for itself twice over. Decent roads to decent ports so we can ship just in time. We can do all this stuff on farm now. This is not hard, it's not rocket science.
To help growers expand into those other supply chains, what role do you see for the associations?
Education, communication. We got to educate, how to do storage better. Look, it's been a really big learning curve for me over the last 15 years on how to store grain efficiently and effectively. We probably don't share knowledge as good as what we should. The more people I can help educate in doing on-farm storage, the better off our industry will be, because our consumer is looking for traceable provenance goods. Why not capitalise on that? We grow the best malt barley in the world here in South Australia, in my opinion. I'll talk to somebody in Victoria and they'll say they grow the best lentils in the world. Why don't we capitalise on that? It's about marketing.
So if you were giving advice to a Mark Schilling of 20 years ago that was looking to get into the container packing as a diversification away from perhaps the bulk grain supply chains, what would your advice be?
My advice would be bring in mature people that know how to run a company, for one. Don't be afraid to pay good money for good people that are on the same page. Communicate on a daily basis and do a plan and a budget. Because one of the things that I've found, in this container trade, it's the transaction. So we all think about it's warm and fuzzy, we'll put some stuff in a box and ship it off, but who are you shipping it to? Yeah. Who's your counterparty? What is your counterparty risk? What's your insurance risk? Those are some of the things, when you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, you do not consider. Yeah. And I've had many a close call where, okay, a good price today is not a good price when you don't get paid.
No.
Simple as that. So, I think one of the things we need is this blockchain technology helps a grower that's coming into the industry that wants to export directly, gives them more security.
In a COVID-affected world that has unleashed much change in global trade, the future for operators like AG Schilling Co remains challenging. The views of Mark Schilling and others will help inform what changes by industry and government will create a more secure future for Australian container operators.